Welcome to On Leadership, a midweek podcast from HDBB. We believe leadership is a posture, not a position, and in the same way postures can be improved, leaders can grow. We want to encourage you to keep going and to equip you with practical ways to grow as a leader. Thanks for tuning in to On Leadership.
Hey there, welcome to On Leadership. I'm Abel, and I can't believe it's already the last episode of this season. You know, one of the biggest questions on our minds in this season has been, how do I lead at home? You know, for a moment, just put aside the question about how do I lead my work teams, or how do I lead in a professional setting in a socially distant pandemic season of working from home. The question on all our minds is, how do I lead myself? And then how do I lead my family at home? So I'm really excited to have Racheal on this episode. Racheal, you represent the working parent. You're married to Joseph, who's such a lovely man. You have a daughter as well. What are 3 words that describe your home life right now?
Oh, those are such good questions. Let's see. And first of all, I want to say I'm so excited to be here. This is such an honor. I've listened since episode 1, and I was so excited when Abel said, would you like to come on? 3 words to describe my house right now. It's a lot of fun. I have a 5-year-old. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of wonder because she's 5. It's also, let's be honest, a lot of chaos, just pure chaos.
Nice. Love it. Fun, wonder, chaos.
Yes.
I think a lot of people relate with that. So the viewer can't see this, but below this frame, there's just utter mess left behind by Levi, my son. And that's why it's an elevated frame right now. Racheal, I know part of your professional work involves coaching parents and running classes on child development. I think you have a lot of wisdom to share on this area today. But I also know that you coach from a place of being a practitioner every day, from very real and honest struggles as well as a working parent. So my first question for this episode today is, for those who are struggling right now in the thick of it, you know, trying to manage their work, trying to manage their home, try to be good parents, trying to be good spouses, what advice would you say to them? You know, is there anything you would say to someone struggling in this area of leading at home right now?
Yeah, I think, first of all, I want to say that you're not alone. I think that a lot of times in the pandemic and in the everyday interactions, it feels so isolating. It feels so like I'm the only one that's failing. And then you scroll on Instagram and it feels like everybody else is doing great. You go in Clubhouse, everybody's on a panel, everybody speaks so eloquently. And here you are, you press the unmute button and all you hear is white noise and just right. And so the first thing I want to be able to
people asking you, can you please unmute?
Unmute, yes. And so the first thing I want to be able to tell you is that you're not alone. And I think more so than that, like as I have grown into a mother, I've learned that you really do your best until you know better. And that when you know better, then you do better. And so I think what I want to be able to tell you is that you're not failing, you're just growing. You're not failing, you're making mistakes. You're failing forward. You're learning that sacred space in which resilience is born. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the most powerful things I've learned as a mother is that I have to make mistakes. I have to say I'm sorry. I have to, sort of lead her in a way of really role modeling to her what it looks like in a tangible, in an authentic way of what it's like when mama has failed and how does she come back? What's the questions that she's asked? I've had to apologize to my child lots of times, let's just say lots of times this season. And I think that's been one of the most powerful things, but to also know that in the midst of this, it's also asking why. So why am I feeling this way? Why am I struggling? Why, what's really going on? Because in my classes, we talk a lot about the anger iceberg, anger, the iceberg, the tip of it is just right explosion. But really underneath it is I was exploding because I was worried. I was worried because I felt helpless. I was helpless because I just feel alone, or I feel rejected, or I feel isolated, or I feel like I don't matter. I feel unloved. I feel unappreciated. So really getting down to the bottom of that and then asking, how can I what are the spaces and the people and the community that I need to help nourish and nurture and heal those parts. So that's something that I would absolutely say is one, that you're not alone, and two, really get to the bottom of it and ask what is it actually that you're struggling with, and then finding spaces that nourish, nurture, and heal this.
That's really good. Thank you, Racheal. I love how you talk about being aware of what's going on in your emotional life. But also, I found it really fascinating what you just said about in this season, you find yourself saying sorry to your child quite often. And can I ask you to say a little bit more on that? Just because I find that quite countercultural. In a parenting relationship, the power dynamic, doesn't always strike you as a relationship where you're saying sorry to your children. So why do you do that, and why is that important?
Yeah, thank you so much for asking. The bulk of what I teach is this philosophy called respectful parenting. And what is respectful parenting? Respectful parenting is raising kind, confident, compassionate, resilient little children in a way that doesn't shame, doesn't bribe, doesn't punish, doesn't threaten them, right? I know some of you are thinking, well, then what do we do? And it's this idea, what research has shown over and over and over again, is that you cannot, no, I was going to say you cannot shame someone into listening. And that's not true. You can shame someone into listening. You can beat someone into listening. You can punish someone into listening. It's very short term, right? So it's just short term. But in the long term, they stop doing the behavior, not because they genuinely understood why I shouldn't do the behavior. They stopped doing that behavior because I just didn't want to get hit. I just didn't want to get shamed. I wanted your love. And so then if we circumvent that and we say, what if I led them in a way that taught them in those moments that they're struggling to ask for help? Mm-hmm. What if I led them in a way that gave them words in those moments to say, I made a mistake. I am so sorry. I didn't mean to do that. There's been, one of the most powerful and one of the most fulfilling and meaningful parts about my job has been raising my daughter, has been getting to watch all these theories and things I developed as a teacher, as a specialist, then be lived out in real life. And there are moments where I still go, wow, that was amazing. There are moments where she'll come to me and she said, Mama, today was really rough. Let's try again tomorrow. And it's those moments that you realize, these small little deposits that you make of saying, I'm so sorry, but really talking, in a vulnerable space, in an authentic space, in a space that shows them, a lot of times we say, I hit you because I love you. No, I hit you because I was scared. I hit you because I didn't know what else to do. I hit you because I was helpless. So instead of, the anger iceberg, showing them all the parts that we don't actually want them to continue. We don't actually want them to go down that road. What if we just showed them the vulnerable, authentic pieces of us that said, I felt really helpless in that moment and I lost my anger and I lost my temper and I'm so sorry. Let's take deep breaths together. So then walking her through those tools, right? And then imagine my child or your child, right, Levi, who has walked through this from the day he is born.
Yeah.
Right?
That's so
20 years from now. Yeah, 20 years from now, he's got 20 years experience on being able, in that moment, what do I need to regulate? How do I act? How am I actually feeling? What do I actually need to nourish and nurture? He's had those tools. He's practiced using those tools 20 years. And so as he goes out in his workplaces, as God forbid if there's another pandemic, he's a lot more equipped and empowered to be able to tap in those things because he's used it. He's got a college age degree in respectful parenting, in respectful communication, in respectful, loving, leading marriage, right?
Yes.
Versus, you go through life and you've done it, you've kind of gone this way and then you got to come all the way back. Yeah.
Yes.
So I think that's the heart of it.
And that's so much more powerful than reading a book on emotional intelligence, for example, because that's powerful, but there's this learning theory that says that, we learn best by doing. The learning theory says 70% of what you learn tends to happen by practice. And so what you just said, Racheal, I think is really powerful because I think you're saying model it. It's often more caught than taught. Even though teaching is important, they're watching your very actions as well. So Rachel, my next question is, can you share some practical tips of what grounds you in the chaos of the everyday? You come across as a very grounded person. And I'm sure that there are times when you're not grounded, you don't feel very grounded as well. What have you found helpful in keeping you centered or keeping you loving and effective in this season, especially in this pandemic time?
Yeah, I was just thinking like, what pieces do I share? And I just want to touch back on, continuing our conversation earlier. It's so many times people say, be empathetic towards your child, right? Oh, but we're showing empathy, we're saying empathy, but are we really doing empathy? And so that's a very, very small and very, very simple tip. It's just in the moments where your child is struggling because, man, he really wants that red cup. And you're like, we don't own a red cup. We only have a blue cup. And you're like, I don't know what he's so mad about. Can I remember a time where I really, really wanted something? I was so frustrated. I really, really wanted something and it didn't exist and nobody else understood me. That's all I wanted.
Yeah, that boy, Ninja Turtle figurine.
Right. I was gonna say it was like that boy or that like CD my parents would give me. Can I remember what that feeling felt like? And then can I acknowledge that that's what he's feeling? And so the way your brain works is that, in your green state, so in your state where you are learning and growing, right? That's your green state. And then as you start to like escalate, you actually go into yellow brain. And yellow brain asks, am I seen? Do I matter? Am I loved? Right? So when he's in that space, can you meet him with empathy, but in a way that he actually feels it? I want you to think about when you travel and you meet someone else, right? And you don't have the same language, but you're able to connect. And children are exactly the same way. So don't say empathy, don't pretend empathy. Just can you genuinely do empathy? And I think a really big tool, again, it's a really small tool, but also such a big tool, is something my husband and I started doing. And we do it with Ella Grace too. And we just check in with each other at the end of the day. It's 5 minutes. It's saying, what made you really happy today? What's something you're really thankful for? But the bigger part is, what did you learn today? Just talking about failure. It's talking about the places that you like, man, I got so mad at da-da-da. Or I tried really hard. I went on Clubhouse and then I rambled and I was so embarrassed, right? And it's having that safe space to talk about those things and then asking, what did you learn? That's the reframe, right? So then from the start, it's not just for her. I mean, we can sit down and say, oh, it's just for our child, but more so than anything, it's for ourselves in those moments to be able to meet ourselves with grace and say, what did I learn today?
Why is that question so powerful? What did I learn today? And you said the word reframe. Can you say a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So a lot of times in your mind, or even for a child, you go down this spiral, right? Where it's just like, oh man, this was horrible. I did terrible. I mean, I don't know about you, but I've 100% done that. I don't know if it's being Asian. I don't know if it's like my upbringing. I don't know if it's my personality type, but I'm a perfectionist. And so I get very caught up in I didn't say this quite how I wanted to say this. Man, can we do that again? Man, like now I was so much better than that. And then I just failed, right? Or why didn't I get it right the first time? Little kids will do that. Like there's so much pressure on kids now to be able to perform, right? Yes. So much pressure on us as adults to perform during a pandemic, be a parent, be a business leader, try to not lose your job or your company or like offend your employees somehow, and still make time to hang out with your friends and still like keep your marriage somehow alive. And your house can't be dirty ever. Like your house needs to be, and you better be making home cooked meals like from scratch, like Whole Foods, and you can't be ordering fast food every night, right? And so there's so much pressure. And so the reframe is important because you're saying a reframe. Was your child fed today? Do your employees know you love them and that you will fight for them and that you are trying your very best, You may not know the answers. I may not know, like, I'm doing my very best to keep this company alive. I got your back. And my promise to you is that I will do whatever I can do and whatever it takes to continue keeping this company alive. But I cannot promise you that it's going to be great. I cannot promise you that, we're going to get it out okay.
Yes.
But do my employees know that I love them? Does my husband know that I still think he is, 10 years from now, we just celebrated our 11th year anniversary. Does he still know when he walks in the room? Do I let him know? Does my face still light up when he walks in the room? It's little things like that. That's the reframe, right? That's the grace. That's the forgiveness. That's the other side of the coin. And I think that's the whole idea of this podcast. That's how we started, right? We said, don't get caught up with what you see on Instagram. Don't get caught up with what you see in the clubhouse. The person that like unmutes and is like performing brilliantly, this is not their first time in Clubhouse. This is not their first time speaking. This is not their first time doing this, right? Maybe it's the same speech that they've rehearsed over and over and over and over again, right? The person you go on Instagram and the mom that's like, looks like she's got everything together, right? How long did she plan that meal, right? How does she have a helper at home? Or maybe she's just really good at this, right? But let's think about some of the things that you're really good at too. So I think that's the power of reframe. The power of reframe is saying there's always another side to the story. Let's find that story. So coming back to what I was saying, at the end of the night, you just say, what was your story today? And how do I celebrate it? And how do I find the good parts? And how do I find the bad parts? And how do I learn from it? That's the reframe. Yeah.
That is so helpful, Racheal. And, there's so much power in asking the right question to inform the right decisions. Asking that question, what have I learned today? I think it's also the foundation of a growth mindset, which in one of the episodes that we covered this season was really, one of the key ingredients to having grit. Just constantly feeling like you can grow. Even in failure, you're thinking this is not a failure, but a moment to grow. So Racheal, I have a growth question to ask. And this is the final question, but I want to keep it as practical as possible. So this is a real life scenario, Racheal. Right now, my baby is screaming. Well, he's not exactly screaming right now, but we can imagine. My inbox is flooding with work items and my wife is annoyed at me, which happens. What is a good game plan for someone in this position?
You're not going to like my answer, but it's really, can I stop and pause in this moment? Just take a deep breath. Right? And that's really what it is. Because when we're in those moments of panic, when we're in those moments of sort of, I'm completely overwhelmed, what our body is going through, our nervous system is going through, is it's going into fight or flight. And when we're in fight or flight, we abandon all logic, we abandon all reason, we abandon all sorts of where we actually want to go, because our body is getting ready to either fight, flight, freeze, or please. So please, in a sense, I'm going to do something that I don't really want to do, but I'm going to do it because I don't want not to be loved. I don't want my wife to not love me. I don't want my child to not love me. I don't want my organization to fire me. Is it really what's best for me in that moment? Not really. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to regulate myself. It's exactly, you hear this all the time. Put your oxygen mask on first. So can I take a deep breath in this moment? And I think, can I trust myself in this moment to see what the priority is? Because I can't tell you, I'm the specialist. The specialist of this household and the situation right now is you. You are the only one that knows if your child needs you first, if your wife needs you first, if your company needs you first. One of the most powerful things I've learned as a mom and as a specialist and as someone that I think as someone who leads people, but with, like you said, by telling real stories. I think it's been so powerful and so important for me to learn that there's glass balls and there's plastic balls, right? And at any one time at home, there's always going to be a glass ball and there's always going to be a plastic ball. At work, there's always going to be a glass ball. There's always going to be a plastic ball. At your marriage, there's always going to be a glass ball. There's always going to be a plastic ball. in your relationships, like with your friendships or in your community. There are times there'll be a glass bowl and there's times there's going to be a plastic bowl. And what you have to do in those moments that only you are the expert of is to be able to say, is this a glass bowl or is this a plastic bowl? Which one do I let drop? And you can let the plastic ball drop. So say, pretend Levi is crying, but he's with his mother. And he's okay. It's not, of course, we don't want, of course it hurts your heart that he's crying. But right now, your wife is at her breaking point. And your wife needs you first in that moment, right? Or maybe at work, there is everything is just broken. Like it's just, that's a glass ball.
It's always titanium balls.
Yes. Yeah.
It falls in the ground.
Yes. And so I think it's so important. It's so important to, I think, again, come back to you and say, you are the expert of you. And that's what we forget. Yeah. We listen to all these podcasts. We listen to all these things and we keep thinking, maybe if I watch another podcast, I'll know more about who I am. Maybe if I go to another sermon, or maybe if I keep going to church, I'll be more whatever it is. But I think it really starts with, can I be reminded that Jesus walks with me? Can I be reminded that I'm fearfully and wonderfully made? Can I be reminded that there was no mistake in the making of me, and that I'm not failing, I'm growing, I'm failing forward. I want to come back actually to your first podcast that you did, and it's been one of my favorite podcasts that I've ever. I wrote it down immediately and I came back to it and I talked to my parents about it. And it was this idea that motivation is driven by a compelling need. So you are important to the world. Your gift to the world matters. You have purpose. Nobody else can do you the way you do you, right? Nobody else can love that little child the way you love that little child. Nobody else can love your wife or your husband the way you love your wife or your husband. Nobody else can lead the company the way you have led the company. So compelling need, a clear vision. Nobody else can see all the glass and plastic pieces the way you can. Then can I surround myself with the people around me that remind me, this is the vision, this is the direction that I want to go. But more so than that, it's the sense of purpose, right? And so at the end of the night, when my husband and I are going, man, my parenting fail today I just failed. I just, I won't lie. There's been nights where I just cry and I just say, I'm a child and family development specialist and I really failed myself today. And he said, what did you learn today? Right. And in those moments, I'm reminded of my sense of purpose. And when I became a child and family development specialist, it was never for the glory, right? It was to tell real stories. It was to meet people. I became a child and family development specialist, or I started working with parents because I remembered what it was like as a new mother, just being surrounded by all these perfect moms around that nobody told you that it was going to be this hard. And I remember thinking, I wish somebody would have just told me that on the first night, the babies eat every 2 hours. That was really you would get 15 minutes of sleep in between. And I remember thinking, that's what I need to go do. Right. And I remember as I was prepping for this podcast, I'm like, oh my gosh, we're going to be talking to the entire church. And I remember thinking, just do it for the one. So if you're the one that's listening, that's just struggling and feeling like I'm failing at home, I'm failing at work, I'm failing in all these places, you're my one and I'm here for you and you're not alone. And we're going to get through this together. So that was my sense of purpose. My sense of purpose was you. So thank you for the privilege. Thank you for the honor. And thank you for allowing me to love, lead, and parent in a way that has really sort of kept me on the path. So I want to encourage you to keep on the path.
So good. Thank you so much, Racheal. I think everything you've said is not only helpful, but hopeful as well. And I think the listeners have so much to appreciate in what you've said. And you just carry your heart on your sleeve with all your experiences as well. So thank you so much for your insight and your wisdom. To those who are listening to this episode, well done for getting to the end of this first season. look out for updates. There are going to be updates in the coming weeks about a possible season 2. And if you've missed any previous episodes, you can still catch them on our Spotify channel or on our YouTube channel as well. So till then, thank you again, Racheal, and see you next time.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks for listening to On Leadership. We hope you found this episode helpful. If you did, why not share it with a friend or post it on social media? Whatever platform you're listening on, don't forget to like, subscribe, or follow and turn on your notifications to receive more great content from HTBB.